with people of all ages, and whereas greater awareness of proper oral health practices and the need to regularly visit a dental professional is paramount to ensuring Canadians lead healthier and happier lives, and whereas promoting the importance of the issues and celebrating the successes of the profession and contributions of dental hygienists will lead to increased public awareness. Now therefore, I, John Stewart, Mayor of the City of Beaumont, do hereby proclaim the week of April 6th to 12th, 2019 as National Dental Hygienists Week in the City of Beaumont, dated this 12th day of March 2019. And we also have a declaration with a municipal statement of recognition. The year 2019 marks the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Canadian Institute of Planners, a national organization whose members contribute to the planning, development, and protection of land across the country. These professional planners assist municipalities by helping to ensure that our land and communities are healthy, vibrant, and accessible to everyone. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the Council of the Municipality of Beaumont, do hereby recognize the centenary of the Canadian Institute of Planners and extend our good wishes to its members on that occasion and support their continued contributions to municipal land use planning in the future. Dated this 8th day of April 2019. 100 years, that's a significant milestone. Okay, so moving on, can I get a motion? Sorry, administration, is there any changes to the agenda as presented? No? Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, so moved.
Buttons are not pushing tonight. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Tonight we have 2 items on the consent agenda. I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, regular council meeting, March 26, 2019 minutes. And item 10A, Councillor Stout's report. I move that council accept Councillor Stout's report as in. Discussion on the motion? All in favor? Information. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimously. Which brings us to open forum, and we don't have anybody registered, I believe, to speak tonight. Cool. Which brings us to item 6A, public hearings. Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, under Section 172 of the Municipal Government Act, I wish to declare a pecuniary interest on this matter. My pecuniary interest is embedded with the relationship my company, Hendricks Construction Limited, has with the 2 development companies actively working in the Centerville site area. I'll step out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, so at this point, I will declare the public hearing open, and that this hearing is being held pursuant to sections 230-606 and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended. Legislative Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public. The purpose of bylaw 944-19 is to adopt the land use bylaw, our zoning blueprint. The notice of the public hearing was provided in writing to the City of Edmonton, Leduc County, school boards, and developers, businesses, and builders. The public hearing notice was advertised in the local newspaper on March 15th, 2019, March 22nd, 2019, March 29th, 2019, and April the 5th, 2019. The public hearing notice was advertised on Beaumont's website on March 8th, 2019. Written submissions received are included in the public hearing agenda package. I have received 2 late submissions that I will read into the record at this time. From the Beaumont and District Agricultural Society, sent on April the 8th, 2019. Subject, Beaumont Municipal Development Plan and Land Use Bylaw. Dear Mayor and Council, Beaumont and District Agricultural Society, BADAS, would like to take this opportunity to commend the Council and Administration for bringing up to date over the past several years a new municipal development plan as well as a new and revised land use bylaw. The massive annexation provided a huge challenge for preparing these documents and in incorporating the existing town and huge future city area. The Society found the process, content, and format particularly well organized and sound. In terms of process, the Society was pleased with the opportunity it was afforded for discussions and feedback related to its property and its future planning and development. The administration was most helpful in accommodating meetings, in receiving input, and providing clarification on a variety of items that were integral to the Society's goals and objectives. In general, the BADAS board endorses the revised Agricultural Holdings AH district as it relates to our current situation. The Society believes Council's patience exercised in the evolution of the two comprehensive documents has resulted in guidelines that will be more responsive and workable for the present and foreseeable future. Respectfully submitted, Charles Fenske, President, and Harry S. Zuzak, Chair of the Development Committee. And our second submission is the Urban Development Institute, sent on April 9th, 2019. Dear Mayor and Council, the Urban Development Institute Beaumont Committee supports the R Zoning Blueprint Land Use Bylaw document in the form currently presented, and we are hopeful Council will proceed to give second and third reading to Bylaw 944-19. We want to express our sincere gratitude to administration and their consultant for engaging in open dialogue with our membership group and ensuring our concerns were listened to, considered, and addressed with practical solutions. Their willingness to work together with us is commendable, and we look forward to ongoing collaboration and ultimately the successful implementation of the new land use bylaw. Kind regards, Shane Guerin, Chair, UDI, ER, Beaumont Committee.
Thank you very much. As we start calling people to come forward and speak in the public hearing, I'd ask that you come forward, speak clearly, concisely into the microphones. Please sign the registration sheet so that we have a record of who was here and who spoke, and we'll get going. So this time I'd like to ask Ms. Doherty to come up and represent the Director of Planning and Development.
Thank you, Worship, members of Council, audience members. I'm here tonight to speak on our zoning blueprint, Beaumont Land Use Bylaw. Prior to the meeting, one page was handed out to you. It is page 26 of the bylaw and actually page 40 of the council agenda. This is a new page to be inserted into the bylaw tonight. As you can see, there is one clause that has been redlined. We received a call from a representative from UDI yesterday requesting that this clause be removed. Some of the amendments that we have made to the land use bylaw actually address this in a different manner, so we have no concerns with removing that. But this request had come after we had finalized the bylaw and had presented it for the council agenda. So we'd like to make that amendment tonight. With respect to the land use bylaw project itself, this project started and kicked off in January of 2018. So over the past 16 months, we have conducted comprehensive background research and engagement internally and externally. Oh, thank you. The land use bylaw is more than just a zoning bylaw. It is the regulatory document providing the rules on how land can be developed in Beaumont. And as we went through this process, you can see that in March through May of last year, we conducted some background research. We had technical workshops with Committee of the Whole and Council, as well as staff. We conducted a public online survey, and we attended the design charrette that was part of the Centreville project so that we could get feedback with respect to that area as well. All of that background research informed us in the drafting of the land use bylaw, and we undertook that during the summer months. And in the fall, we had a first draft that we were able to present and test through a citizen workshop, a developer workshop, as well as a staff workshop. We provided that draft on public review online, so it was open to the public to take a look at and provide comments on. We conducted open houses to gain more feedback and provide information to residents and stakeholders, and we conducted numerous stakeholder meetings with the commercial community, the annexation landowners, as well as developers and builders. Through that process, we were informed and revised the land use bylaw, and then again presented it for first reading to council. We had additional follow-up meetings with stakeholders after that, and now here we are. So that's where we're at in the process. Why are we rewriting the land use bylaw? As I stated, it's more than just a zoning bylaw. It provides the rules on how our land can be developed. And there were a number of factors that prompted an update to the land use bylaw. When we undertook the last rewrite of the land use bylaw, it was conducted over a period of more than 2 years. And it incorporated some updates in language, regulation, and uses, but it really provided for more of the same type of development that we were already seeing, and it didn't provide opportunities for future different innovative opportunities. Over the past couple of years, we've also seen a marked increase in direct control applications, indicating that the current bylaw no longer meets the needs of our communities. We actually have more direct control districts in our current land use bylaw than we have regular districts. So that just goes to show that it's just not working. With changes to Beaumont's planning practices, and more recently its new municipal development plan, we saw this as an important time to update the land use bylaw to reflect these recent changes, as well as changes that were occurring at other levels of government. The land use bylaw is, again, the regulatory tool that implements and codifies the municipal development plan, and this version is focused on delivering on the 6 overarching themes contained in the municipal development plan. Specifically, the municipal development plan includes requirements for aspects like walkability, residential density targets, diverse housing, mixed uses, neighborhood services, connectivity, public realm improvements, and economic development, all of which have been addressed through this draft of the land use bylaw. The overall goals of the project were, again, to implement our municipal development plan, but also to make sure that we were in alignment with our strategic plan, that we were implementing policies from the transportation master plan, and that we were also following the Centreville Area Redevelopment Plan and the Beaumont Urban Design Guidelines. From the outset, we wanted to focus on having a user-friendly bylaw that simplified processes and language. We wanted to restructure it to be efficient and clear, and encourage innovation and high-quality development by flexibility and objective standards. And we wanted to provide a more transparent and consistent decision-making framework. By adding in a number of administrative policies, we have set those consistent decision-making frameworks in place. The project started with, as I had earlier stated, an initial round of engagement. And as you can see through that first few months, we spent a lot of time engaging with different parties. We've spent a lot of time reviewing a number of our different planning documents and continued to do that in the fall. So once we had that first draft, we went back to the citizens, developers, business owners, annexation landowners, and the public to find out what they thought of that draft. So those were the different engagement opportunities that we participated in. In addition to all of those sessions, we also spent a lot of time providing public awareness of what a land use bylaw was. So we also attended a number of different public engagement events that had nothing to do with the land use bylaw. So the Public Works Week, or Public Works Day, we attended that to provide awareness on it. We included Beaumont Communique articles. We pushed out social media posts and tweets, provided newspaper articles and advertisements, and again, attended at numerous different public events. As we refined and calibrated our land use bylaw, we continued to have developer one-on-one sessions and met with the Chamber of Commerce. And all of those meetings with all of these listed stakeholders produced comments that we incorporated or used to refine the land use bylaw as we got to the final version of it. What did we hear through this public engagement? We heard that stakeholders were looking for housing variety and affordability, that the changes to setbacks for site needed to be more flexible, wanted us to retain that small town feel. There was an indication of integration of non-residential uses into residential areas. There was an importance of trees and landscaping that they wanted us to maintain. We were looking for options for parking and design standards. Again, a simplified application process and a clear application process. There were concerns with subdivision standards and maintaining local context and accommodating that change over time. For the sake of variety, so you're not listening to my voice all night, our consultant, Melissa Ayers, will continue on with the next few slides.
Thank you, Council. Just going to give you an overview of the highlights of the bylaw. Based on what we heard and the direction in the municipal development plan that the city is now looking to take, this bylaw, instead of being a traditional use-based bylaw, is a hybrid format of both use and form elements. The conventional zoning that's typically used in land use bylaws is still there with the uses that you would find and require are a requirement of the Municipal Government Act. But form elements have been added as well. That's particularly in relation to both neighborhood level design requirements such as subdivision standards, but also building level design standards, which have been incorporated in things like the frontage standards. That was to provide, in addition to what a traditional land use bylaw does, provides a little bit more options that would meet those strategic goals that the city is looking to implement. Yeah. The image on the left is the old current, I guess, land use bylaw. That bylaw has 19 land use districts and 14 direct control districts.
The way around.
Other way around.
Yeah.
Sorry, 14 land use districts and 19 direct control districts. And then the proposed bylaw in front of you tonight has 7 land use districts and no direct control districts. So every single DC has been integrated into the land use districts that are proposed tonight. The structure of the bylaw has been changed significantly as well to reflect that, where all of the standards that apply to any district is incorporated in each district. So even though the bylaw is still 230 some pages, there is duplication throughout the bylaw with the intent that the user is put first, where all they have to do is go to one section of the bylaw to find all of the regulations that pertain to that district. No more cross-referencing or any of that. It's all in each district. So for a user, it won't feel like 230 pages. They'll really only need about 15. As we mentioned, some of the form-based standards that have been added into the districts in each of the districts include subdivision standards such as block lengths. Maximum block lengths provide a restriction on how far a pedestrian would need to walk to achieve some connectivity or to reach a destination. It's not based entirely on the road network. There is an additional pedestrian network that would be created. Density standards and form standards also comply with the requirements of the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plan, and it provides additional clarity on what a building or a site should look like before development happens. For parking, this was very much reflective of the Transportation Master Plan and also integrates the recommendations from the parking study that Beaumont undertook. And they are, in this bylaw, significantly reduced from what Beaumont had before. There's also additional opportunities for reducing parking, such as shared parking, particularly in commercial areas. And again, this is to promote more walkable neighborhoods and alternative transportations, make land use more efficient by providing additional opportunities for the built environment as opposed to just parking, and to maximize that land opportunity. Signage is where some significant changes to the administration processes have been proposed, and particularly by adding a streamlined fast track process. So for simpler applications where the application, also the standards for what is submitted to the application or the municipality as part of an application is very clear, you have to have professional graphics, things like that. The municipality can turn around those development permit applications faster. They have to meet those minimum standards required of the fast track, but instead of a 40-day development permit process, it would be a 20-day development permit process. And that was in response to comments from the business community to have a simpler and easier to understand signage process.
So since first reading, we have had additional engagement with a number of different stakeholders. The Agricultural Society, the Urban Development Institute, and members of the residents that reside currently in the Main Street District, and our Chamber of Commerce. One of the adjustments made to the bylaw since first reading is with respect to the map. Some of those changes incorporate lands that were formerly agricultural holdings but have been zoned as conventional neighborhood. The conventional neighborhood district is really more of what Beaumont has traditionally seen in its development. So we had no concerns with pre-zoning some of that land to facilitate development in that regard. It was more of the same type of development that we would see, as long as the proper planning documents were in place as well. We also revised the zoning for the St. Vital Church to accommodate the historical overlay, and just fix some of the tweaking that needed to be done with that map. With the agricultural holdings, we did remove the definition of outdoor storage and replaced it with one for recreational vehicle storage, resulting in the ability for us to remove some of the exceptions for specific sites that were currently in that land use bylaw because they had a recreational vehicle storage use. So we clearly defined that and were able to remove those exceptions and just clarify that. With respect to block and subdivision standards, we did have considerable discussions with Urban Development Institute members on this. These standards provide direction around block length and more closely integrate land use and support multimodal transportation. In the integrated neighborhood district specifically, they address the necessity for rear lanes and provide direction on how this requirement is to be achieved. These are important elements coming out of the the Municipal Development Plan. The intent is to elevate and enhance the needs of a pedestrian network. We recognize that this is a new concept being introduced in this land use bylaw, and we've worked closely with our developers to create an understanding of what Beaumont's objectives are for including these regulations. Throughout this process, these regulations have been reviewed and revisited numerous times with the development industry and internally to be certain we were clear on the intent and how this would be administered. While we did start out with some more stringent regulations, in consultation with the development industry, we have massaged these to address concerns and comments and to clarify wording while still maintaining the intent of the municipal development policies. On this, again, UDI had contacted us after the council agenda had been prepared and requested removal of clause 3.3.4B2 as indicated in the sheet that was handed out to you earlier. And we had reviewed this request. Based on the changes that we had made, we see no reason to not remove that clause. The Heritage Resources Overlay is an addition to the land use bylaw. And to confirm, this is not a historical designation under the Historical Resources Act. That is actually a provincial designation. This overlay is intended to identify the municipal heritage value of properties that were built prior to 1940. The purpose of the overlay is to allow the gradual transition of these properties as the Main Street District area changes and develops over time. It allows for a more organic form of development in that area. These properties may continue in their current form. However, to maintain their heritage designation, no external structural changes are permitted to the principal building, as the overlay recognizes the distinct look or architecture of that building. Accessory buildings are allowed to be built to support the principal building. Should an owner wish to remove or demolish an existing principal building, this overlay does not prevent them from doing that. The owner would then be required to build to the regular standards of the Main Street District. So this provides a little bit more certainty and flexibility for those owners. We met with the Beaumont Chamber regarding portable signage, and changes were made to the regulations specific to that based on those comments. Initially, these signs were allowed for a maximum of 30 days at a location, but were then required to be taken down for a 30-day hiatus. We received comments from the Chamber about the effectiveness and costs related to setting up and taking down these signs. There was also some consideration given to our ability to administer this. This section has been revised to allow for signs to be displayed for 1 year, with a requirement to renew yearly, allowing us to revisit and review for complaints, for amendments to conditions, or otherwise. We will monitor this for effectiveness to ensure that we are not unintentionally creating inequity for businesses or creating an overabundance of signage. It is the intention that all of the new signage regulations will provide ample and effective opportunities for legal signage for businesses. Based on some of the changes that we were having to make, we had to make some changes to definitions. Those are identified in the red line document that's attached in your agenda package, and then also there were minor revisions and amendments that I'm not speaking to, just to finalize and clarify the document. In addition to preparing and finalizing the land use bylaw, we also, in conjunction with our consultant, prepared a monitoring program. The monitoring program, the purpose is to identify any unforeseen transition requirements and to ensure the continued implementation of the MDP. There are a number of policies in the MDP that actually talk about monitoring certain items. So we have incorporated those into the monitoring program of the land use bylaws. That's the document that's implementing those policies. There'll be regular ongoing monitoring over a course of 5 years. So the monitoring program is for 5 years. However, the monitoring program speaks to reporting every 6 months. So it's not that we're going to keep it for 5 years and never look at it. For those 5 years, we're looking for trends. We're wanting to see what's happening, and there'll be regular reporting based on those key indicators that we have indicated. And to that, there are approximately 20 indicators that we are looking at monitoring over the course of these years. We are grabbing data, acquiring data from multiple data sources, including current documents that we have in place, as well as we're committed to meeting with our development community on a regular basis to provide opportunities for conversation and open dialogue. I'd like to indicate at this time that the land use bylaw is a living document. So even once it's passed, that doesn't mean that you won't see us again for amendments in order to effectively use the monitoring program and make changes to the land use bylaw. It is important that it comes back for regular updates. And then finally, once the project is completed, we would like to celebrate our successes of not only just the land use bylaw, but also the municipal development plan, as the two work very well together, hand in hand, and must. We have also received numerous inquiries from potential new businesses who are looking to locate in Beaumont. And the new land use bylaw provides opportunities for them that our current bylaw does not. Some of these potential new developments are actually waiting to make application under the new land use bylaw as it better suits their needs. To reiterate the words quoted by my economic development colleague, organizations pursuing economic prosperity require innovation to do so. We recognize and acknowledge that the current draft is a major change for Beaumont and, in fact, the region. I would like to note that the City of Edmonton is undertaking a rewrite of their land use bylaw, and they are focusing on many of the same principles we propose here tonight. Overall, we feel that the land use bylaw has been drafted to stimulate new design ideas and to provide greater flexibility and opportunity for development. Finally, this land use bylaw implements the policies of our complete community municipal development plan that Council recently adopted. I'd like to thank our consultants from McElhaney Consultants, Melissa Ayers, Stephanie Gagnon, and Myra McNamee for their efforts over the past 16 months. They have been a wealth of information and support throughout the project. And this is not to exclude any other parties who have provided considerable input into this project, including many of our own staff. But McElhaney's involvement with this project comes to a close after tonight, so I wanted to ensure their efforts were acknowledged. Our staff will continue to work with stakeholders as this bylaw is implemented and monitored, and I would like to thank them for their continued efforts in making this a success for all interested parties. Some of that continued work will include finalizing an online and interactive version of this bylaw. This version currently includes, what we're working on currently includes over 6,000 pop-up definitions, bookmarks, and links, and will continue to be refined for easy navigation. We're working on a how-to user guide which is being finalized and will provide a pictorial guide for LUB users and new users. An internally annotated land use bylaw is being produced to assist planning staff in transitioning to this new version, which will facilitate in serving our applicants with consistency and regularity. There have been many engagement discussions which have resulted in revisions, and we want to ensure those discussions are not lost in interpretation as time and staff changes occur. Additional materials will include information pamphlets and website updates that will supplement the information in the land use bylaw. And we look forward to continuing to work with our development and business communities through the monitoring process to ensure this bylaw continues to achieve the desired outcomes of the municipal development plan and the community. Again, I'd like to reiterate that this is a living document, and changes to our ongoing plans may require amendments to the land use bylaw in the future. Once the public hearing closes, administration will be requesting that council give second and third reading to our zoning blueprint Beaumont land use bylaw with the amendment noted earlier tonight. That concludes our presentation. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation tonight, and having watched the process go on now for 16 months, it's a tremendous body of work, and congratulations for getting it to this point. I will open up the floor to questions from members of council. None. Interesting. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right, so at this point, we will ask anybody wishing to speak in favor of the bylaw to come forward and speak at the mic. Please remember to sign in and then state your name for the record.
For the record, my name is Shane Garine. Okay, thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council. I want to start out by introducing myself. My name is Shane Garine. I am a project manager at Qualico Communities, who is actively building the Rousseau neighborhood. I will note today, however, that I am taking off my Qualico hat. I am putting on my Urban Development Institute hat as a representative of the Beaumont land development industry members at large. The UDI Beaumont Regional Committee was established in 2016 as a number of developers that are members of UDI and some of the consultants, all who are active working in Beaumont, agreed that intensive activity in the city warranted a more engaging, collaborative, and consolidated voice representing the development industry as we endeavor to reach common goals in building this community. For those who are not familiar, the Urban Development Institute Edmonton Region is a non-profit association representing the land development industry. Our members are development companies and professionals involved in the industry, such as planners, surveyors, architects, landscape architects, engineers, contractors, lawyers, financial managers, municipalities, and utility companies. Recognizing that the development of land is an essential function of our economy, UDI Edmonton Region's activities and objectives focus on building communities together through the promotion of wise, efficient, and productive urban growth. Over the past couple of years, we've been cultivating our relationship and building trust with Beaumont administration. The exciting news is that we have been welcomed with open arms, which has led to engaging, open, and in our opinion, very productive dialogue. We have been consulted on numerous items that impact stakeholders in our industry, including the Municipal Development Plan, preliminary efforts to implement consolidated area structure plans, ongoing collaboration on proposed updates to the general design standards, and of course, the land use bylaw that is in front of council this evening. Part of the reason I'm here today is to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those ongoing collaborative efforts, and to note that we look forward to active involvement in the implementation of the other aforementioned initiatives. Now, of course, the main reason I'm here today on behalf of UDI Beaumont Committee is to advise that our members support approval of this land use bylaw, also known as our zoning blueprint. I want to acknowledge the efforts of administration, notably Ms. Dargy and her current planning team. I know Kendra's in the room tonight, to name another. I'm sure there's a lot of other work that's going on at various levels of administration that for people that we're not exposed to. And we also want to express our gratitude to McElhaney for their consulting work. We want to thank them for their willingness to openly engage with our group, listen to our concerns, accept our advice, and essentially lay the groundwork for us to meet our common community building goals. Projects of this nature are challenging and robust, and this process was handled with professionalism and expediency. And in my opinion, administration deserves a round of applause. So thank you for your work on this. For humor, actually, there was a point where I commented to Ms. Dargy that we were actually maybe moving a little too fast, and I had to check myself, because as a land developer, we're not normally in the business of asking administrations to slow down in any regard. So that happened once, and hopefully we can erase that from our memory and proceed as normal with us pushing the issue. So. In closing, we are hopeful the Council considers and ultimately ratifies our zoning blueprint. And I note that we look forward to implementation. I think we can all agree that implementing a new land use bylaw will inevitably result in growing pains and some confusion for all stakeholders. But the most important part is that we have reached an understanding with administration to monitor and update the bylaw as needed to ensure Beaumont continues to be a great place to invest in and ultimately build together. Thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you very much. Really do appreciate you coming in tonight, and thank you for expressing support and for the process and for the ultimately finished document. Questions from members of council? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Through you, the presenter. Thanks for coming tonight. I just had a question around the letter that UDI sent in ahead of first reading. It basically indicated no support for the document. Didn't provide much for specifics around that, and it was received actually kind of last minute. I'm assuming by you sitting here tonight and supporting that any concerns UDI would have had that necessitated the writing of that letter and submission to council have been addressed?
Absolutely. Your Worship, through to Councillor Van Nieuwenkirk. Yes, we essentially are acknowledging that we've made some strides, and basically at that point we were unable to support the bylaw for a number of reasons. Some of them included we really wanted to have a more in-depth discussion on the block length and what that meant. We had some concerns around that, but I think we've come to a common understanding, and with some of the meetings that we've had since then, we've been provided with additional clarity that make it something that we're willing and able to accept and work with. We've also, as discussed previously in Ms. Dargy's presentation, I guess basically we're going to go into a monitoring program here, and they're committed to that, and that gives us definitely a level of comfort when it comes to making sure that some of the unintended consequences of the bylaw can be basically brought back to light and addressed as we move forward. So we really appreciated that, and those are some of the things that helped us, I guess, come together as a developer group and find ourselves in position to support the bylaw today.
Cool, thank you. Just follow up?
Follow up, yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to any feedback you have along the way, because I think, until you use a new tool, you might not know how some of the pieces of it work. So, thank you in advance for bringing any of that feedback forward as it might pop up.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Very much. Any further questions from members of council? Once again, thank you very much for coming in, and it's nice to hear.
Thank you very much.
Support. Is there anybody else in the audience wishing tonight to speak in favor of the bylaw?
Do I really have to sign my name?
Yes, you do, Harry.
Okay, my name is Harry Zuzak. I'm here representing the Beaumont District Ag Society, now known as Badass. So from here on in, that's what it'll be called for simplicity. I just wanted to, on behalf of our society, really commend council and administration for a phenomenal job that's been done on both the municipal development plan and the land use bylaw. The cooperation in respect to the administration was particularly very helpful, reached out. We provided feedback, they clarified things, and so we're very happy in respect to the agricultural holding district and Badass's role in it in respect to the heritage culture aspect, recreation and agriculture, which our goals and objectives are, i.e. to strengthen those for the community as a whole. I know it was a humongous project in terms of both of those documents, but I think to me, the content and the process and the format really is distinct from what I've been used to in many, many other communities in respect to zoning bylaws and municipal development plans. I think it's a major step forward, and I got to say that the patience that council had in terms of providing enough time that these things could take place has been well worth it. And just wanted to say we fully support and we hope you approve the bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in tonight and speaking to us. Is there any other members of the public wishing to speak in favor of the bylaw this evening? Okay, seeing none. Is there any member of the public in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the bylaw? Nobody wanting to speak in opposition? Is there any person in the audience tonight deeming themselves affected who wishes to be heard on this matter this evening? All right. Okay, so we'll declare the public hearing closed this time and move to second and third reading. Ms. Dargy?
I have nothing further.
Okay. All right, so this time I will move that council give second reading to bylaw 944-19 to adopt our zoning blueprint, the Beaumont Land Use Bylaw. Discussion on the motion. Members of council, or questions of admin. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, through your worship to admin, maybe a little bit of a comment and maybe a little bit of a comment and a question. Section 5.27 in the document is titled Site Cleanliness, and then subsequently 5.31, point 1 and point 3 talk about planting tree shrubs and being responsible for weeds and such. So site cleanliness and weeds has been something that residents have been fairly vocal on for some time around construction sites, both residential and commercial in Beaumont. And we've refreshed the language, we've refreshed the document, and we've re-engaged with all the stakeholders and parties around. So I'm really looking forward to some of residents' concerns being alleviated with fresh language and fresh conversation that we've had around these concerns. So more of a comment. Question around section 5.31. There are some cases around town that have been brought to my attention where a developer may plant the wrong species too close to a fixed structure, too close to a sidewalk or too close to a driveway, or plant a species that's the right size now, but when it grows, the root structure is going to wreck the sidewalk, and that liability will come to the city of Beaumont after the developer's done that and hands over the maintenance of those things. The provision in 5.31, does that allow us to address concerns where species are too close or roots can wreck things in the future?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Van Newkirk. This clause will prevent and allow us to take measures if there is something that is planted too close. The difference comes, though, if there's a tree planted and then something is added, so a driveway is extended. Those are two different circumstances.
That's right.
Yeah.
In a case where there's a sidewalk present and then all of a sudden there's a spruce tree planted a couple feet from the sidewalk that's the right size now, but
Yes.
definitely won't be in the future. Situations like that need be addressed by this piece then.
It can be, yes.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. That's all for now, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Danlick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Dargy, just a quick question about the land use bylaw itself. Again, thank you for all the work we've done on this. It's been a phenomenal talk, and I've learned many things about how land use is going forward. One quick question, is there anything in the bylaw that will detract from economic development for future economic development? For future businesses to come to town to open a business? Is there anything about our bylaw that would be restrictive, perhaps, that we haven't thought of previously, or?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Danlick. Just to clarify the question, you're asking whether or not the bylaw would prevent certain businesses? Is that the question?
Any part of it that could be considered restrictive from opening businesses in Beaumont? Anything that would drive anybody not to come to Beaumont to open a business?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Danlick. I'm struggling to answer that question only because there are places in Beaumont where certain businesses can be located and where certain businesses can't be located based on their use. And depending on where they may want to locate or where there is space, that may be what is preventing them from being able to come to Beaumont. But as a whole, there shouldn't be anything that stops them from coming with respect to how things are zoned.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Through your Worship to presenters. More of a comment than a question, really. I simply wanted to commend you, obviously, for the tremendous amount of work and vision that's gone into this. But in particular, I wanted to commend you for the flexibility and the willingness to find a solution to some of the problems that have been brought up by public consultation. We've got two supporting letters from in the agenda package that I think speak for themselves, and two of the presenters this evening have also spoken to the same thing. I'm very pleased to see that flexibility was maintained, and there was a willingness to try and find a solution. And I touched on this in first reading, and my particular concern is that when we do this, when we change a land use bylaw as radically as this has changed, then we are taking existing conforming and what's the alternative?
Permitted?
Permitted uses. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Conforming and permitted uses and changing them and saying, well, these are now different. And my particular concern is that we don't go from, well, I was permitting or conforming before, and I've been in the town for 50 years, and now I'm not because the rules have changed. And I noted with some, I thought it was the correct thing to do when we annexed the new lands that from the Leduc County, that the maxim was, well, if it was permitted or conforming before under Leduc County rules, then it will be, even though it may not, in Beaumont, even though it may not conform with the letter as they are now. And I think that principle needs to be extended, and as far as I can tell, to the whole of the land use bylaw, and as far as I can tell from what I've seen tonight and from other conversations, then that has been done. I commend you for doing that. I think that's the right thing to do. Thank you.
CEO, did you want to?
Just administratively, the recommendation was to give second reading to bylaw 944-19. We did amend it today, so we need the acceptance of the amendment. So just suggesting you might want to add that.
Thank you.
We just picked that up. Sorry.
Thanks. All right, we'll finish questioning. I'll add that. We'll get there. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, echo congratulations, Mr. Dargy, and your team for getting to this point, and thank you for all the work that was done. Certainly appreciate the comments being made today as well. Coming in here, this is an incredibly complex document that can typically could potentially make it difficult for residents and businesses to engage. But the first comment I want to make is around the readability of it. Being a lay person in this field, going back and reading the old land use bylaw or the current land use bylaw, I should say, very hard to go through and do that. But since day one, the way that you've brought council through this process is certainly appreciative. And when you actually look at it now and your comment about, you can look at 15 pages and understand exactly what you're doing and what you need to know and not cross-referencing. So just the layout and the maps, obviously I'm a communications guy, and that means more to me than the actual implementation almost. And so I really appreciate it, and hopefully that others feel that way as well. I also want to acknowledge all the engagement that you've done on this work. You've brought residents and businesses through this process. Certainly something that us as council can't really speak to in detail, and you guys have definitely stepped up. And I think the amount of residents that have reached out and said, might not quite understand it, but I definitely have had the opportunities. And so that's exactly what we're looking for up here, that council, that residents and businesses have had the opportunities to speak through this process. Councillor Stout acknowledged all the revisions that you've made through this process, and I think this is a real flagship that we can point to. We can show that if you get involved, if you're part of the process, clearly where administration is willing to listen and adapt that. So I really wanted to acknowledge that and speak again on that piece there. All my questions, you had the pleasure, I'll call it, of having to walk me through the open house for about 45 minutes to go through all my detailed questions, so I didn't have to ask them here tonight. So I want to thank you that. So I don't have any really specific ones, but you did speak about some of the revisions since first reading. So I did want to touch on the monitoring piece. I think that gives a lot of comfort, clearly, to our development community, also for me. Could you just speak to what our measures are for recall? So you said we look at it every 6 months. If there were things that were caught that, hey, we might need to make a course correction here, what's our avenue for us to be able to do that?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Monkhoff-Swain. So some of the indicators that we have identified in the monitoring program are how many variances are we granting? What types of frontage standards are we approving? So frontage standards is a new regulation that we introduced into this bylaw. Are we getting any differences in those frontage standards, or are we still largely getting front-attached garages? So what does that look like? How many single-family, multi-attached, and semi-detached dwelling units are we getting? What's the variety in that? Because we're also looking at a variety of housing types. So there's a number of different types of indicators to monitor how easy the land use bylaw is to use and the readability of it. We're looking at either an online survey or follow-up telephone surveys to actually ask applicants how they found the process. So it's a lot more engaging from our staff to find out how this is working. As I indicated, we're also looking at regular meetings with the development community to see what kind of problems they may be encountering with this and how we can make those adjustments. And then again, as I had indicated, this is a living document, so any of those trends that we're seeing will be looked at and analyzed to see what changes need to be made to the land use bylaw to continue that this continues to be a document that implements our MDP policies and is easy to use and read for the users.
Thank you. Just a follow-up. So essentially, you go and collect all the feedback. I understand that part of it. In terms of actually implementing it, though, when changes need to happen or need to occur based on the feedback, and you guys agree, it comes back before council, and recommendations. And how does that process work?
Thank you, Councillor Monkhoff-Swain. So the process follows very much the same process as adopting the full land use bylaw. Because it is a land use bylaw, it does have to go through first reading, a public hearing, second and third reading. Depending on what those changes are, it would also depend on what type of public engagement we may need to do with that. So if it's a large change that may affect make a major amendment to the land use bylaw, we may have to do additional public engagement to identify that to the residents as well.
Yep, thank you. And I think the overarching point is that, we're willing to listen and go through that process. If we didn't get it right, then we're willing to work through that. So that certainly gives a lot more comfort to me, and I'm sure, and we heard it already as well. So thank you on that. Just a second question, maybe a third, depending on where I'm at in my count. With regards to, so obviously part of this whole process involved engaging with businesses, developers associations. Just wondering if you could just provide a bit of background as to the feedback that we're hearing from the community about businesses. You touched on a little bit about wanting to come into the community, but just the general sense we get more from that business development side of things. Obviously, we talk up here a lot about economic development, and this plan has a huge impact on that. So just curious, from an overall engagement economic development perspective, what are we hearing out there around this?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Monkhoff-Swain. Economic development has been closely engaged in this process. All of the changes, any potential leads that economic development may be finding were communicated to us as well to ensure that we were meeting the intent of those leads, that they were able to do what they were hoping to be able to do in Beaumont. Some of the discussions that our economic development director has been having with potential businesses opening here are very excited about this land use bylaw and the ability to have some flexibility that they haven't seen in other land use bylaws. So that is what has been communicated to me.
Thank you. Just a closing from me on this is I'm really looking forward to, I think there are going to be a lot of municipalities across the country. They're going to be coming here to sit down and chat with you about how we got through this process. I think it is definitely going to be a gold standard, and really appreciate all the work you got done, and hopefully maybe we can charge out some fees to try and recoup some of that back. Yeah, looking forward to having our neighbours to the north come down and asking you how you did it, because it's a great document, and you heard the comments from others. So good work getting here, and we'll see where we go in the next couple of readings, but good job getting to this point. Thank you.
Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this may sound like a repetition, but I did write these words last night, so I'm not just listening to what others are saying. And I did review all the edits that were made and the amendments that were made. And I guess I want to add to what people have said, that the stakeholders must have been really involved and really, you listened to them. And I really appreciate that you've done that. Because they know what it's like to work with this bylaw. They're the ones that have to follow it, and people that come after them. So I'm really pleased that whether it's parking or signage or rear lanes or sidewalks or historical resources, that we address those concerns. And you did that on behalf of council and the citizens. So I'm really pleased with this. I think it shows, as others have said, that we've listened and we've adapted. And we're not just doing something to get it done. We're doing it because it's meaningful. And really commend you for the process. You've done a great job. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich. So I'll just throw my concluding comments on there. I'll keep them short because council has said most of what I wanted to say anyway. But thank you very much for the work you've done and the consultations that you've put on. I have a background in this in my previous life before election, and I know how dry reading things like land use bylaw and code books can be. And this one's actually wasn't too bad to get through, and it was nice. Once I got through the first one, it was really easy to get through the next 6 because you could just skip through. So it's an awesome book. It's laid out well. If I was still out there in the industry, I'd be excited to come use it. So thank you very much, and we'll see if we can't get second and third reading done here. All right. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, so I'm going to do a friendly amendment to a proposal we move second reading as amended, this amendment here, and therefore all in favor. And that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move third reading? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move that we defer third reading until the next council meeting.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a large document. There's been a whole bunch of work done, and one of the slides that was presented earlier showed, I think, a page and a half of engagement. Coming into the meeting tonight, I was wondering the same as Councillor Stout, if it was prudent to do second and third reading on the same, but tonight, I think we've heard a lot around support. We've had last-minute letters of support. We've had previous letters of support. We had speakers supporting up here, and at this time, I think I would be okay with moving on to third reading tonight. I was leaning towards the other coming into the meeting, but seeing the support that's out there and the engagement pieces that have been done, I'm comfortable with moving on to third reading.
Thank you. Councillor McGuffey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Appreciate the comment again, Councillor Stout. I thought we may get here. I don't think we need to delay or defer it. We've been doing this for 16 months. The business community, the residents, our administration are ready to put this through. I've gone through it. Makes sense to me, and the revisions I think were very clearly explained. We also have that monitoring process that was referenced, so I'm confident that we've got it right. And if we didn't, then there's avenues for us to make amendments. So development community's looking eager to get into this, and I think we let them at it and see what we can do here in Beaumont. So I would not support the motion on the floor. Thank you,
Councillor Danlick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I concur with my two previous colleagues and their comments on deferring to a third reading being 2 weeks from now. We've gone through the document a number of times. I'm convinced that it's accurate, it's clean, it's well done. It's an amazing amount of work we've done through the last 16 months. Public engagement was very, very thorough. The key thing about delaying to a third reading would be to give some more reflection any questions may come up. I cannot think of anything that would change my mind regarding supporting this bylaw by waiting 2 more weeks. I'm convinced we've done a very good job of public engagement and stakeholders as well too. So I'll vote against the motion. Thank you.
Any further discussion to the motion on the floor to defer? Seeing none, all in favor of deferring? If you hit yes, you're voting to defer. If you hit no, we're not going to defer tonight. A vote for yes, you're voting in favor of Councillor Stout's motion to defer. If you vote no, you're voting to continue on tonight. It's a third reading. No, we can't. This is a Keystone Cops kind of thing. Councillor Stout's motion is defeated 5-1. Do I have a member of council willing to move third reading tonight? Councillor Danlock.
So move, Your Worship. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion. Well, it's third reading of the amended one. Discussion on the motion.
Does it, excuse me, does it need to be amended? Is it not required to be amended?
We amended it at second reading.
Thank you.
So, all in favor of third reading? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Congratulations, well done. 5? Yeah. All right, that brings us to item 7A, registered presentations. We have one, Beaumont Tactical Urbanism, University of Alberta. Floor is yours.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I am pleased to be here this evening to introduce to you the Tactical Urbanism Project. The City of Beaumont undertook this project in partnership with the University of Alberta Planning Studio students. 3 of the 4 students who have worked on this project are here to make a presentation about the work they have completed. So, without further delay, I will hand it over to the students and let them introduce themselves and present on the fantastic work that they have done for us.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Chambers. Looking forward to this tonight.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. Thank you for having us here this evening. My name is Jack Czerniawski. I'm joined by my colleagues Stephen Shuttle, Olivia McPhail, and unfortunately our colleague Jared Connors, who also contributed on this project, couldn't be here. We have worked for the past 3 months with the City of Beaumont as part of our HGP 495 studio class as urban planning students to develop a tactical urbanism installation and implementation strategy.
Top button. There you go.
It's this one.
Oh.
Okay,
Thank you.
isn't it? No. Oh, yeah, no, I got it. Let's see. Okay. Okay, but it's not.
Just as a brief rundown of what this project entailed, we've been working since mid-January. We began with some research on the concept of tactical urbanism, reaching out to stakeholders both in administration and in the community with a visioning workshop to develop installations, stakeholders, and the relevant themes to address through our project. We conducted further engagement with Beaumont administration through February, and in March we piloted a tactical urbanism installation in Beaumont Centreville Temporary Park, and in April we developed a final report based on our work to date that's now been shared with Beaumont administration. So just to break down what exactly tactical urbanism is, essentially it's temporary installations, generally with a larger urban initiative in mind. These can be things from community building to downtown revitalization. By adding these simple design features, it transforms spaces and how people interact with and understand them. And they're implemented in low-cost temporary ways, which poses less of a financial risk and risk against citizens who may not like the initiatives. It can also act as a form of public engagement, a lot more experiential than simply a 3D render at a public engagement event. Generally, the types of installations focus either around transportation and changing how people move through spaces, beautification and adding new aesthetics to spaces, or activation and adding new prescribed uses to spaces.
So as part of our project, we hosted a project team workshop, and we had 24 attendees from City of Beaumont administration as well as external community organizations. We hosted our workshop and it centered around what is tactile urbanism, as well as how it could be implemented in the Beaumont context. We had a World Cafe style activity where participants went around to different stations. One station looked at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and constraints. Another looked at potential locations where we got participants to pinpoint where installations could be. And we also looked at preferred types of installations, such as that image there with voting with dots. And then following this, as we're developing our concepts, we were in with internal circulation to stakeholders and dialogue with the City of Beaumont.
So using what we heard to develop 3 installation concepts, we analyzed them using different screening criteria of benefit, perception, logistics, and use. And we proposed 3 concepts. Our 3 concepts were Concept A, the living room, a central gathering place with straw bale couches. Concept B, 50th Avenue beautification, increasing visibility of pedestrian crossings. And Concept C, Beaumont's backyard, a wayfinding strategy and activation of walking trails. So after we sent this project implementation plan to Beaumont staff, they selected a hybrid of the living room, or Concept A, and Concept C, Beaumont's backyard. So on the slide, we have a plan view diagram of Laplace. Laplace was located at the Temporary Park in Centreville. Laplace was structured to expose visitors to a variety of tactical urbanism elements and gather feedback for future initiatives. And it was planned and promoted as a free temporary event for all ages and abilities. Our key goals of the project were to understand the successes and shortcomings of the first municipally led tactical urbanism installation in Beaumont, and we wanted to learn more about how to best implement future tactical urbanism installations. So our installation included fun and interactive programming elements like giant Jenga, ladder ball, a chalkboard, snow painting, and photo frames with props. We provided picnic tables, straw bale couches, and a fire pit in order to create a cozy living room feel. And in order to attract spontaneous visitors, we included 3 A-frame signs, and wayfinding signs were installed within a 5 to 10 minute walk of Laplace. Wayfinding signs also directed pedestrian traffic to other areas in the Centreville area, like the Ken Nickel Park and Ride.
So what did we hear at Laplace? Over our 2-hour event, we had 52 attendees, which we were pleasantly surprised with. And we used the engagement tools of a quick survey and a chalkboard to gather qualitative and quantitative feedback. Some key takeaways were a unanimous response of yes for more tactile urbanism installations. And we also asked attendees to provide their own ideas for tactile urbanism, which generated 29 unique ideas. And shown in this bar graph are the similar ideas grouped as key themes that emerged. And the most mentioned were related to outdoor entertainment, activity programming, and art. And so as students, lessons learned from doing this project were letting it grow and show the way. So our collaboration with the City of Beaumont on leading and implementing the project, going small and making it feel like home. We saw this as an opportunity to connect with the installation surroundings and attract participants. And last but not least, engagement is the name of the game. We found that it provided a critical starting point for a path towards success in our project and really shaped the direction of our project.
So as for next steps, we've outlined an extensive report that covers our entire process, identifies our alignment to relevant policies such as the Outdoor Space and Trails Master Plan, the Municipal Development Plan, and the Centreville Area Redevelopment Plan. And we've shared this report with Beaumont administration and essentially laid the groundwork for future tactical urbanism in case the city has more appetite to implement these in the future. Thank you, and we welcome any questions.
Appreciate your coming in tonight. I admit I had questions when I first saw the Laplace pop up. It's actually a really kind of a neat thing that can really help your community become and feel like a community. So I commend you for taking that project on and executing it here in Beaumont. Open up to questions from members of council. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, team. That was great. I actually got a chance to go down and see what you're doing, and I was intrigued by the signs that said La Place, and I thought, well, this is cool. It brings in the French theme and what's going on. So I like things like that, and I'm glad you did a final report, and I'm glad you put implementation ideas out there. But what does that really mean? Because if we receive this as information, then where does it go? So I'm just wondering if maybe Tika, you have it, sorry, Ms. Broom, if you have any information, or perhaps it's for the CIO, can we do something like this again, or is it a one-time only and we have to put more money to another report? I hope not, but we didn't have to pay too much for this. I think this was a student-led and staff volunteered, but I do think that we could do some more like this, and I'd like to see that.
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, absolutely the intention is that what we've learned through the project that we've undertaken with the students is that it will be carried forward. Our intention is that we'll be doing more work on the administrative side to develop a refined strategy so that we'll be seeing some of these things pop up and maybe exploring some opportunities for the public to get involved if they are interested, because tactical urbanism often is an initiative that is community-led. So we're definitely open to those conversations in the future.
Follow up, yep.
Thank you. And I kind of hoping that we could also maybe look at different locations, not just that one, because I think part of this is people within their neighborhoods. I know we do block parties occasionally, but something like that that's spontaneous, I think gets people out of their houses and meeting people that they might not otherwise see. So I think that's great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship, through to the presenters. A lot of hard work, and it looked like this one was probably fairly fun to put together as well. You alluded to 52 participants and then 29 ideas. The response graph there that had outdoor entertainment, activity programming and stuff, is that a summation of the 29 ideas graphed out?
Through Your Worship to Councillor
Van Newkirk. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a summation of the ideas based off the frequency that they were mentioned through the comments.
Yeah. Are you able to remember or speak to some of the ideas folks presented around outdoor entertainment? Do you remember offhand any of those?
Offhand, some of them related to outdoor concerts. I believe movies were mentioned at some point.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Councillor Monkoff-Swain.
Yeah, thank you for going through this process. I certainly enjoyed it. I think we did get a bit of a heads up. Sorry, I kind of knew what it was about, but definitely was intrigued. And myself and my two little ones came by here. I did have to go and buy the Jenga game, and I've played unbelievable amounts of that. So that was one thing I could have done without, but thanks for that. just in terms of the feedback that I've got from residents along this, is we're constantly we're adding new things to our community all over the place, and so an example that was brought up to me was this new park that's happening potentially in Colonial. I think there's money in the budget for it, and there was a community organisation that's kind of working hard to try to promote that and get that engaged. But when we build these things, that particular park is kind of tucked away in a spot where very walkable for a lot of families. But I think that could be an example where we can use that. I'll get the reference wrong, but we had the signs kind of posted up, say 5 minutes this way, 2 minutes this way, to show people where things are in our community. And we have some great little pocket parks that you notice when you're running around our trails. And I think that was what I was really encouraged by seeing that. It was just something new that popped up. So great job on the project. Certainly, Councillor Barnhart asked my question about where do we go from here. Certainly, I'd like to see this implemented more, and yeah, maybe we'll play some Jenga again. And I'm pretty good at it now. So that's all I had to say. Just thank you. Great job on the project. It was really exciting.
Councillor Danyluk.
Thank you, Worship. Great job on the project too. I'm really intrigued by the diagram, the overview of the layout with the fire pit and the straw bale furniture and that sort of thing. I know it wasn't part of your mandate, but I'm curious if you have any idea what the cost might be to do something like this. If you took your recommendation as we see it on this map and you were to build that, any idea what the cost might be? Do you have any idea from your studies, and just kind of give me a hint of an idea? Because this is a very creative way. I'm looking at this thinking this is a pretty cool idea. It really is.
Through your worship to Councillor Danyluk, we actually did implement Laplace, so we came in around $700.
700.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Do more of those.
Don't want to set that standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that written in stone, that number?
So while I have the mic, I want to really thank the students for taking such a hands-on approach to this project.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's good.
And we do appreciate it, and thank you very much. But yeah, no, I hope we see some further initiatives as they come forward. And once again, thanks for coming in and showing us your project. Appreciate it. All right, which brings us to business item 8A, the Smart Fare System funding. Ms. Lewin.
Good evening, Your Worship, and members of Council and the public. Tonight, I just wanted to bring forward to Council some new information on the Smart Fare system that was brought to you at your May 22nd, 2018 regular Council meeting, where Council did approve the Smart Fare System Memorandum of Understanding. So Beaumont responded to a call for submission under the Alberta Community Transit Fund in late 2018, and on March 14th, 2019, Alberta Transportation has approved that project with a contribution of $164,800, which is about 40% of the cost of the project, with Beaumont being required to fund the remaining 60% of the project. On page 283 of your agenda package, there are some high-level costs for the different components of the Smart Fare system that we have received from the City of Edmonton and some of the other partners. So we are asking today that Council approve funding for the Smart Fare system in the amount of $247,200 to be taken out of the Mill Rate Stabilization Fund in 2019.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lewin. Before I open it up to Council, I got a couple questions. Mm-hmm. How come money now and not in budget 2018? And what's the schedule we expect this money to be expended upon?
Thank you, Your Worship. At this time, we haven't been given a date that the funding will be spent. The project is scheduled to be completed by September 2020. And then there are components of the systems that have to be purchased in 2019 and do the system testing on the buses and make sure that everything is good for that September 2020 timeline. So I don't have the specific details of when the funding will be required. And I know we originally had said we would bring it to the 2019 budget, but we didn't have any additional information until this time that we received the approval from Alberta Transportation.
Okay, so we don't know when it needs to be expended, and we didn't have it and we didn't have this information at budget time to put it in the budget. Is that what I'm hearing?
We had very rough estimate of the cost of this system, and then we said we would explore grant funding opportunities. And when the Alberta Community Transit Fund submission came through, that's when we made the application. We did not find out until March of 2019. So.
Okay, fair enough. And how much money is left in the Mill Rate Stabilization Fund?
That's a very good question. Mr. Harris can answer that.
To your worship, there's enough. It will be, if you approve it today, it'll be coming back with a budget amendment on April 23rd, but there is enough money to cover it in the mill rate stabilization.
Okay, Councillor Moncassin.
Thank you, Worship. So the smart fare piece is something that I know many users that chat to me on the bus that talk about the need for that. They've heard about it. Just, from basics of having to, get one ticket here and then get on another system and get another ticket. That is frustrating. So excited for this to come forward. My question is around timing. A couple of questions, actually. First, with regards, I assume we're not the only municipality who sought this. Is that correct? Or like with St. Albert and Strathcona County, did they also apply for this similar grant?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Moncassin. Yes, all of the Edmonton Metro Region municipalities did seek this funding, and all of them did receive grant funding for this project.
And maybe off the top of your head, pretty unfair to ask, but we got 40%. Is that consistent kind of across the board?
The fund is 40% from the province and 60% from municipalities.
Okay. Thank you. My ultimate question, though, around this is around timing. And so obviously the other initiative that's going on is this Regional Transit Commission that is trying to be stood up. Mm-hmm. And obviously us here in Beaumont have signed on to be a part of that through the MOU process. Mm-hmm. That's ongoing. But in October timeframe-ish, they're going to be coming back with more of a proposal of are we in or are we out, right? And that certainly hasn't been decided by this council. And so my concern would be if we're going to enter into this for the cost of $247,000, and if it comes down into in October when we're looking at and we see the other costs and maybe this council chooses not to participate in the commission, then what? Our buses, we're not going to be able to be integrated without that commission. So would that smart fare system go away? Just what's the process around that?
So these two will mostly work hand in hand. The smart fare system can completely run on its own. So whether Beaumont participates in the Regional Transit Service Commission, our transit service would still be operated through our current contract with Edmonton Transit. What that looks like if the Transit Commission goes forward and Beaumont chooses not to participate, that would be something we'd have to negotiate with Edmonton Transit at that time. But the smart fare system, it doesn't matter who's running the system and operating the service, that smart fare system would still apply to our Beaumont riders.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So thanks for the clarification. Sorry, I'm just going to keep
going. Yeah.
So the City of Edmonton, so once we implemented the smart fare system, kind of managed through the City of Edmonton, right now, if we're not part of that, there's no incentive for them to kind of help us, right? So that's where the potential costs in terms of the administration of it could potentially go up. So I guess the ultimate concern that I have is are we getting ourselves something into ahead of before we make a final decision? So maybe a better question would be to ask, what's the harm in us waiting until budget time when we will have more clarification around our budget for our 2020 budget, but also whether we're in the commission or we're out? What would be the concern about waiting that time? aside from the residents who ask me every day why we haven't got it.
There's a potential risk of us not receiving the funding now. If we do, if the City of Edmonton comes back and says, okay, VIX, which is the agency that we would be getting the smart fare system through, if they're at the point where they're ready to invoice and Beaumont has already committed through the MOU, and we don't have any funds to pay them, then I'll have to come back to council to request that funding somehow. But so I guess that would be the only risk at this point.
Just a quick question: does the grant, is there a sunset clause on the grant? The 40% that was provided to us.
There may be. The way the letter is written, it doesn't appear that there's a deadline for expenses, but we haven't had that meeting with Alberta Transportation to talk about that period of time where expenses and claims have to be submitted.
Thank you. Sorry.
To your worship, if I may, to yourself, council, and the public. Yeah, in regards to approving it right now, there is, if we don't proceed, it's being paid out of reserve funds, mill rates funds. There is no tax impact. So if you don't proceed, we won't spend that money. So you approve it now, which if come September, the City of Edmonton says, well, we got to get going. We got to, need to have 100,000 of it. It's split over 2 years. The initial grant was based on 123.8, I believe, over the 2 years. By putting it all right now, it's showing to the regional partners we're committed to it. And plus, there is no tax impact today or for this project. If we don't proceed, the money stays within the mill rate stabilization fund, and we're no worse off.
So when you say we don't proceed,
should we decide not to proceed because the regional transit isn't working, and we're worried about, council's worried about the cost of administrating the smart fare and everything. So if we don't proceed with this project, again, we won't pull anything out of mill rate stabilization, and there's no tax impact.
Okay, so I'm just going to, sorry, council here, but I'm getting confused now where we're going here. So when you say, maybe I'll ask it a different way. If we give you the approval here today and we come back and do your budget stuff that has to happen, will you go out and procure this before we get into October, before we make the decision?
That timing has not been addressed by the Smart Fare program yet. The only schedule that I have is that they are working toward getting this implemented by September 2020. I do know that the remaining, our buses currently have smart bus technology on them, so we don't have to have them fitted for that. So there other transit authorities are having those things done earlier than ours because ours are already completed. But then we have the validators to be put in and things like that. So whenever that schedule actually comes out, then we would have a better estimate of when that is happening. I just don't have those dates at this time. So there's a potential that it could all happen before budget, but it might not. I don't know that yet.
Yeah. Okay, and maybe I'll make a comment and I'll be quiet because I see there are other people trying to get in, so I apologize for maximizing the time. Your comment about the mill rate stabilization fund, and it doesn't impact taxpayers. I appreciate that on one hand, but on the other hand, we've got that stabilization fund there and that could be used for other things, right? So I appreciate the comment, but the nuance is not lost on me. So maybe I'll hold off there and see what others think. So thanks for allowing me the time.
Quick question, is the Duke Transit involved in this project?
The Duke Transit is involved in this project, yes.
Councillor Margaret.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Lewin. My question is basic. I want to make sure I understand. This smart fare system is the electronics to be able to use some kind of a card access to purchase bus fare? Is that essentially it?
Yes, that's correct. It's basically a tap-on, tap-off card system where you would purchase the card and then you can just refill it online and then use it on any transit service within the metro region.
Does it dovetail with the fees? In other words, if you pay your bus fee here, does it get you on the bus in Edmonton? Is that the intention? Like you would pay one fee from maybe destination might be different in terms of distance, but is it, or do you have to pay again when you get to Edmonton?
So the way the system will work is if you get on at the Ken Nickel right now, you would tap on You would tap on off when we get to Century Park. You would tap on at the LRT and wherever you were going from there or on a bus. But how the fees are distributed to each member would be Beaumont's fee at this point is $5 per trip. So that fee would get put aside and it would get sent to Beaumont. And then once you hopped on to Edmonton Transit and anyone else in the region, you would pay their fare and it would go to those respective members. So you're not going to see that as you tap on and off. You're going to notice that your account is going down, but it's not, you don't have to, now I have to pay Edmonton in this. It's all in one transaction as you tap on and tap off the system.
Okay, so it streamlines the collection of cash.
Absolutely.
Eliminates that. We don't lose any control over how much we charge for our bus.
No, everything, Beaumont Transit can charge as much or as little as possible that they wanted, and that all of those revenues come back to Beaumont Transit.
And all of the money that we're spending to run this system is going for either capital, this is project management, but it's not ongoing operating?
I don't have the ongoing operating costs of this at this point, but this is be mostly capital and project management at this point.
So there would be costs still coming out of the revenue collected and the
potentially, but we do currently pay that fee anyways to Edmonton Transit as they operate the service. So we would have that administrative fee anyways.
And there would be the capacity to have a machine to buy the cards here located in Beaumont?
Yes.
Or several of them. One other point I just wanted to raise is we must have applied for the grant under the town of Beaumont because we got the letter back to the town of Beaumont. So
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Small point, but
It's been in the works for a while. It's actually like conversations surrounding integrated fares and things like that are going to come out of talks that are going to go on at the Transit Commission. So eventually you may be able to tap on in Beaumont and then tap off at your final destination. But those are few and far between. Transit is also just the first phase. I mean, we could if we wanted to. It has potential to double as your library card and other things. I mean, the technology is really quite robust. So it's a cool system, and if we can get it to work, it's going to be really great and the benefit for our residents. I'm still concerned around the timing of the budget ask, but notwithstanding, I still think it's a great system. Mr. Harris?
Yeah, through your worship, the rest of the council and the public. Further to the question of how much is in the mill rate stabilization, and I said there was enough to cover it. There's currently, before anything is adjusted for that, $1.227 million.
Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, I got kind of a three-part question here. First one would be for Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris, what's the timing of the upcoming budget evaluation? I don't remember the word for it that's done each year for council. The spring budget review. What's the timing on that? When would that be coming to council?
Oh, it's coming to council April 23rd with the budget amendment, and that's 23rd. That is based on the fact that there is a change in the growth numbers, and also as part of the year-end audit, when we know what actual projects have been completed and not, so to adjust those carry-forward amounts. There's, outside of what council has approved for Ella and this approval, there may be one other approval in there that council has approved. There is nothing else coming forward other than what council has, and just to put it in place, because that sets out the mill rate stabilization, or sorry, the mill rate for the year.
That's right.
So we need to have that updated to do that bylaw.
Okay, so April 23rd. Okay, second part here. Do we know what the pulse of our neighbors are on the request? I'm assuming the regional partners or the regional municipalities are all going to be faced with a similar question around smart fare and the timing. Would their timing of this question be similar to ours right now? Are you able to comment on that?
So Beaumont, when we submitted our grant application for this, we actually worked with all of the regional partners in submitting our grant application so that they were all consistent for the program. There are some municipalities that had funding set aside already, so like the city of St. Albert and those kinds of bigger communities, and then some of the smaller ones had waited and to ask once the grant was approved. I have not heard from any municipality that hasn't received the funding. I know that I believe majority of them are now asking or have already asked for that funding from their councils.
Okay, and last piece. So I guess so where I'm going with that, I too can have concerns over the timing more than the system, because I think the system will be good for all the reasons that we said yes to it originally. But one of my concerns and what we talked about earlier was that agency fee for $100,000. So that piece could seemingly go up and down with economies of scale. And, you know, should partners decide not to become part of it, you know, there is a potential for that agency fee to go up, you know, just with the decrease in economies of scale. So that's more of a comment, because I know you can't really speak to that because your crystal ball doesn't work any better than mine for that concern, right? So I guess my concluding comment would be support for the system, but concerns with the timing of it. Definitely, I think that the picture would be a little more clear April or beyond April 23rd, which is coming up quick on the the relook at the budget and the realignment as Mr. Harris had suggested, and it doesn't sound like the impact of waiting, save for any sunset clause in the grant that we may not be aware of. But it does sound like there may not be harm in waiting a little longer to get closer to that October date. So I'll let others weigh in. That's kind of my thoughts for right now.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Reiterating partly, I think, what Councillor Van Nieuwkerk has just said. Am I missing something here? I'm having difficulty understanding, and please clarify for me if I am. Given the vagueness of the timeline that you've suggested, what is the harm in us not doing this, not spending these funds right now, or earmarking these funds for spending? Why don't we wait until we have a definite schedule for this? I'm assuming that, did I understand that correctly? If there's no sunset clause on the provincial grant, then we would still qualify for the same provincial grant, so there's no risk of losing that. And subsequently, then we have to draw down $247,200 from the Municipal Sustainability Fund at the time that we need it, and pass the necessary budget amendment as and when we need it. Why do we, I guess, why do we need to do this now? Why do we need to do this today? Why can't we wait a few months until we've got a better timeline? I guess that's the summary of my question.
Through council, or through your worship, the rest of council, you don't have to approve it right now. That's council's prerogative if you don't want to approve it, where from a finance perspective and clarity for staff and looking at moving forward for, on other things, it's before us. Council initiated the process. It wasn't included in the 2019 budget originally. So if council wants to wait to approve it, we thought it was prudent to bring it forward. Administration did, to present it to you guys to make that decision. So if your decision is to wait, the decision is to wait.
So, well, my follow-up would be, so what, are there any disadvantages to doing that? Is there other than perhaps a lack of certainty, are there any problems that you would foresee from doing that?
Through your worship, in regards to outside of lack of uncertainty, change in provincial government, funding falling off, change in direction of the other regional partners. No, I mean, again, it was something that council initiated, had asked for us to apply for the grant, which we did. It wasn't included in the budget. It's coming back to council as it was a council initiative to make that decision. So we brought it forward to present to you a process of moving forward. If council doesn't want to do that process and wait till October, that is council's prerogative.
Thank you.
Councillor Danlett.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Lewin, I think you mentioned the regional smart fare system may not be operational until approximately September of 2020. Was that correct in your earlier comment?
Those are the dates.
To your understanding?
Yes, those are the dates that we've been given, yes.
I guess what I'm trying to get my head around is, the worst case scenario for us. I know we're working towards being a part of the Regional Transit Commission being established now, and there's a large decision coming down, as Councilor Markoff-Swain mentioned, as our lead representative on that commission, that there'll be a big decision coming down for us in the fall of this year, whether to do regional transit or not. So I'm just wondering, if we allocate the money, even today for that matter, what's the chance of that money being drawn down or taken out to be used for the smart fare system until we make the decision in the fall? So if we decide in the fall not to proceed with the regional transit and we stay on our own with our own existing transit service, we'd be spending, if I'm wrong, $247,000 to allow the Beaumont transit riders to use a smart tap technology instead of buying a ticket, if we decided to just go on our own. So I guess the chances are, I'm concerned that if the $247,000 is taken away or taken out of our account by September, and we go sign up to be part of Regional Commission of Transit, we've basically spent a lot of money to have some people be able to use a tap card. That's a bit of a concern. Regional Transit opens up a lot more possibilities for smart technology to be used more widely in the area. Is that a fair assessment then, that we could be sort of pigeonholing ourselves somewhat?
If Beaumont decided not to become part of the commission with all of the other 12 members joining, then yes, you would be accurate in that statement. Okay. If anything else was to happen, if Edmonton chose not to become part of the commission, then it'd be a plus for us because we would be able to hook up to their system no problem and they'd still operate it for us. So I guess at this point, until that commission decision is made in the fall, then yes, it's anybody's guess at this point.
Okay. So just a quick follow-up then. So as far as based on what you know about the situation at hand, there's not much chance of the $247,000 being drawn down somewhat between now and the fall of this year, before the Regional Transit Commission decision is somewhat made?
I don't know that at this point.
Right.
At the way the schedule is set right now, it doesn't look like there will be any funds spent before the fall. But again, I'm not 100% certain on anything that between the commission piece and the Smart Fare program. So.
Agreed. Thank you.
Councillor Markoff-Swain.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I really want to get to yes today. I think you've heard the concerns, but ultimately, Mr. Harris said, it's obviously our prerogative. So thank you for that. But administration is recommending this, so maybe I'll give you a chance again to kind of bring us around and why you're recommending us approving this at this stage as opposed to coming back in October.
If I may, and Ms. Lewin can correct me if I'm wrong based on my understanding of, there are two separate programs. There's the Smart Fare and then there's regional. And what Ms. Lewin was saying is that the Smart Fare may start, be up and going in the progress in September, and the regional may not be decided until October, November. The Smart TAP will still be applicable whether we go regional or not. Because the buses are there, we can still tap and it will work for us, kind of deal. Even if we're not a member, the concern, I guess, is the fee, the agency fee that's going to be there. I believe that agency fee is going to be there irrespective of whether we're in this Smart Fare business or not. The other advantage, as the Mayor has indicated, is that there is a lot of positives outside of the Smart Fare for the transit, because it opens it up for potentially for using at aquatic centers, be it our aquatic center, be it a resident here wanting to go to Edmonton for special use. So that's where it's going. Is that going to happen tomorrow? No, but the way the grant was structured was it showed that 50% of the project was going to be done in 2019 and 50% was going to be done in 2020. So if you're looking at September 2020 as the cutoff date, and you assume that you go based on a year, so by September 2019, the potential is that we spend potentially $100,000. That's the potential. as Ms. Lewin says, we don't know for sure. That's how the grant was done. All the communities did the same process for the grant. So we would be coming back probably sooner to you for approval to go, whether you want to truly be in the Smart Fair business or not, irrespective of regionalization.
Okay, so just a really quick, go ahead. Sorry, quick follow-up there. So I'm nearly there. Good answer. Just to be 100% clear, if we are not part of the commission, if we choose in October not to be part of the commission, the Smart Fair system could still work. Now, it would be a different mechanism, and there's the agency fee and all that sort of stuff. I'm not too concerned about the agency fee. I'm just more making sure that we're not spending $247,000 on something that will get us from here to Century Park. And then basically we've got to get into a new system on whatever the regional commission goes with if we're not there. So in summary, if we're not part of the commission, will our Smart Fair system work no matter whether we're in or we're out?
Yes, it will, because whether we're part of the commission or not, all of the other members are going to be going to this exact same system. Okay. So whether it's, a tap on, tap off, and Beaumont has their share, and then somehow if we get onto a commission bus, those fees would still be separated into the different areas. So it would still be useful whichever direction we end up going.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate the back and forth there. I don't know if we've even got a motion on the floor or not yet.
No motion on the floor yet.
I'm comfortable, so thank you.
Yeah, and just for my own clarification, it's sort of the maximum upset price. We're only going to expend funds as necessary. We're not going to.
That is absolutely correct. Yeah.
So we could have a look at this in budget and find other alternate sources of funding if we want to.
Absolutely.
Councillor Barnhart, my list changed. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I was wondering if by way of finding a motion that would work, if we took off the 2019, or is it possible, did I hear you correctly, that we might not have to spend the 247 in 2019? It might only be 100,000, say? Like, would it help if we didn't? The accountant's going crazy there because he doesn't want us to do that.
No, I'm not going crazy. I'll give you an option, but it's going to be the same effect. To your worship, my apologies for blurting a little bit. To the rest of council. Basically, the initial intent when looking at it and potentially presenting it to you was to split it over 2 years. So you'd have a 2019 budget amendment, and then you have your 2019-2023 financial plan will also be amended to show 50-50. At the end of the day, it's the same impact as putting it all in this year because it impacts your reserve accordingly. So we can do it either or. What it does is it allows the project to show up there, and maybe they get creative and everything gets done before December, which I doubt it. But we can split it. We can split it based on how the grant application was made.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Margolis, final comments.
Yeah, I was just prepared to move a motion. I didn't see anyone else lining up there.
Cool. Move the motion.
So I'll move up that council approve the funding for the Smart Fair system in the amount of $247,200 to be taken out of the mill rate stabilization fund in 2019.
Fair enough. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Would you consider amending that? We can do what Mr. Harris just described, which is halving that amount and for 2019. And
yeah, why?
Okay. I can't think of a good reason if we're not going to spend it all.
We're going to spend it. It's not like it ends at the end of, we're going to restart it again. It's there. It's not allowed to come out of 2019, 2020. We're going to take it out.
So can I ask a further question?
Sure.
Which is, all right, if we did that, if we took half of that amount and on April the 23rd we made a budget amendment to take half that amount, what is that? Out of the 2019 budget, does that make any difference? Then we would have to also put the next half into the 2020 budget.
And sort of the reality is we're going to spend the total project cost as necessary.
Yeah.
So we may not, it may not be a half and half scenario. We may have to, it might be a 2/3, 1/3, where we spend 1/3 this year and the rest next year.
Yeah,
So
I'm thinking that's the more likely outcome, isn't it?
It's
That we spend less.
It's a little bit
than
more
that.
flexible if we just approve the whole amount and,
Yep,
and let them draw down. As
agreed. Agreed. You've satisfied.
Councillor Daniluk?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do appreciate the information you provided, Ms. Lewin. I just want to, the last comment you had with Councillor McGough-Swain about the TAP card, just to make sure clear in my mind, my own comfort zone is that I don't want to have us, I'm worried about making a decision and become a lame duck down the road. And what I mean by that, to clarify that, is that if we don't join the commission in the fall, which I think we probably will, but if we don't, and we spend this money on this technology, then our riders can go from Ken Nickel to Century Park using the TAP card, and use that TAP card to go from Century Park to downtown Churchill Station. That won't change. So, okay, I just make sure, I know you said that, but I'm saying it a second time, that won't hurt anything, and give me a confidence that we are not making a decision that could become a lame duck for us down the road, and I would criticize myself badly if that were to happen. I'm giving you a comfort zone that they are separate issues, but there's a lot of money involved here. Even though it's coming from the stabilization fund, it's still $250,000, which is not a small amount of money. So if you're confident, and I believe you are, that our riders will be able to do the tap into Edmonton's system, if not part of the commission, if you're confident in that, then I'm comfortable moving forward. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
Councillor Van Nieuwkerk?
Well, thank you. The one question that hasn't been asked, and it might have been asked when it first came forward to us, is just around if we approve this and move forward and become part of the Smart Fare, what do we sign up for year-over-year maintenance and program costs in the recurring years? Do we have any indication of what that might look like?
Those costs have not been determined at this point. That is something that once everybody had signed on with the MOU, they were going to refine these costs, VIX being the agency that would be supplying this. All of those are supposed to be coming to us at this, and we just have not received those yet.
Follow up? So is it correct in saying that you don't know what the time, or we don't know what the timing on those year-over-year maintenance costs are? So we don't have any economy of scale, whether we're looking at 50 grand a year or 200 grand a year moving forward once we're signed onto the system?
Yeah, at this point, we don't have those numbers yet. Yeah.
He brings up an interesting point. Is there an option to stop this process? Should we find at that point that we find out that we're at 3 buses and they want 50 grand a year to maintain it? Or is there, yeah. So I guess if we find that those costs are too cost prohibitive for 3 buses, can we stop this process?
Yes, at this point, yes, we can. Before any capital expenditures occur, we are supposed to have all of the refined costs for this so that we can make an informed decision on how this is working. And then we would have an agreement with VIX on what those year-over-year costs would be, and at this point, Edmonton Transit will be administering the program, so we would have their administration fees, and we would have all of those lined up. So yes, if it was cost prohibitive, yes, we could decide to opt out.
Okay, yeah. So I would ask that we get that back for a look before we expend capital costs, please. Further discussion on the motion? Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you. Your Worship, there's capital costs here, so by approving this, without that information, we're approving this.
Mr. Harris?
Through your worship, if you want to do a friendly amendment to the motion, and I think you mentioned it while I was coming back, is that you can put in that the budget is approved, subject to the spending, but spending is subject to finding out what the operating costs on a yearly basis, i.e. staff brings it back, and then you guys can pull this back before any money is spent.
Are you open to that friendly amendment?
Friendly guy.
Friendly guy. Okay, so amended.
Yes.
Yes, I got that one, yeah. All right, any further questions or discussion on the motion? All right. Is this going to be quick, you guys, or what? Okay. All right, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Good job. Tough one. Yeah. Brings us to bylaws. Item 9A, bylaw 941-19, source control bylaw for first reading. Ms. Kathy Lewin.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council and the public. So the purpose of bylaw 941-19 is to regulate the use and operation of Beaumont's wastewater collection system and to establish source control requirements and regulations. So at the December 9th, 2008 regular council meeting, council passed bylaw 689-08, the utility services bylaw. Since that time, the Alberta Capital Region Wastewater Commission Board of Directors has approved a source control bylaw, which directs all member municipalities to update their respective bylaws to align with their bylaw number 8. So before you, you have a copy of the source control bylaw, and so basically this bylaw that we're proposing aligns with the Commission's bylaw so that all of the components within the bylaws match for different types of things within, releases to the system, discharging into the wastewater system, what types of grease interceptors and those kinds of things have to be implemented, how often we're monitoring and testing the wastewater quality. So we're looking to get first reading of this bylaw this evening.
Thank you very much. Is there a member of council willing to move first reading? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Pleased to move first reading. The council give first reading to bylaw 941-19 source control bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Questions of admin? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, thank you. So I represent Beaumont on the Alberta Capital Region Wastewater Commission. Happy to see this in front of us so that I can report that we're moving it forward. Many other member municipalities are a little further along the way, so I'm looking forward to a yes on this from council. Thank you.
Excuse me. Are we a little tardy compared to others? Fair enough. I was going to say, anybody else doing the kind of work we're doing? All right. No further discussion on the motion. Call the vote. All in favor of first reading. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brings us to bylaw 9B, bylaw 954-19, grant funding advisory committee amendment, first, second, and third reading. Mr. Harris.
To Your Worship, in a need to keep the time down, before you is a recommendation from administration following the March 26th, 2019 regular council meeting to amend the grant funding advisory committee from a minimum or from 5 members to a minimum of 3 to a maximum of 5.
Awesome. So this is basically implementing the decision we made. Great. Move first reading. Councillor Barnhart.
So moved, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you. Just a comment, I guess, for administration and members of council, just bringing some feedback that I've heard from only 2 residents around this. A couple of folks had approached me and said that they would want to be on a committee like this, but they've been a little bit hesitant to respond based upon it being themselves being associated with a group in Beaumont. And not wanting to be involved or perceive that a decision they make on the grant advisory committee may be detrimental to either another group that their family is also involved in or to another group that they have friends in, which tells me we have a small town feel in Beaumont, and that they didn't want to be perceived as biased at any time on the committee. What can administration do to quell some of those concerns, or in an attempt to increase the numbers? Because what we heard so far is that the number of applicants to join this committee, we had a conversation to get to this point where we did amend some language on that. I don't know if there's anything that administration can do or say, or anything we can change moving forward that would maybe put folks at ease around the process by which we are going to review and rank applications that are brought in.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw a couple comments in before administration does.
Sure.
But I think part of that's public perception, because the final decision on this still resides with council.
That's right.
They're just making a merit list.
That's right.
And it's still up to, so we're going to weigh the decision on whether or not groups get funding or not the grants committee. So perhaps there's some awareness around what we're actually asking them to do versus
perhaps some role clarity. Yeah. And I don't think that there's a to-do for that right now, but I think moving forward, as a committee like this gets legs, that it becomes more clear to residents that council does have final say. And please don't be afraid to get involved in this and look at the applications to this very important piece that we've put forward. I believe it's very important.
I agree.
And support for the community, or the community asked for something like this, and we're putting that support out there. And we're asking for, individuals to be involved in helping us rank and make those decisions. I think that's great that we did that, but it's only good if we get participation. So, yeah.
Oh, fair enough.
So I bring that forward as information and question. It's a tough one to put your finger on. So,
through your worship, to the rest of the council, basically the intent is to work with the group, and this is the inaugural group.
That's right.
And basically, lay out ground rules. Yes, you may be a member of a group or whatever, and we'll look at, if you're specifically a member of that group, you can say, well, maybe I won't be involved. I'll step out, as Councillor Hendricks does when there's a potential conflict of interest. That's why having 5 members is good.
That's right.
But still, their voice is valuable to hear. And it is a group decision, so there may be 4 other people who just totally disagree with that person. So you have to, like in council, you have to convince the rest of your members to come up with an order. And I will be working with the group along with my executive assistant in regards to setting it up. And it's a learning process. We believe it's going to be a very positive process. And it's nice to know that we're not getting people because everybody's involved in the community. But we'll just have to be able to promote that, it's great you're involved, you can be involved in this. At the end of the day, it's still a council decision.
All right. All in favor of first reading? That carries unanimously. Is a member of council willing to move second reading? Councillor Daniluk.
So move, your worship. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimously. I move that we move to need unanimous consent to move to third reading. Can I get somebody to move that? Councillor Hendricks?
So moved.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move third reading? Councillor Stout.
My pleasure to move third reading, your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Stout. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Yeah, that's awesome. I like it when we get full participation. Council, is there any questions from Councillor of Admin this evening? Is there any councillor wishing to make a statement this evening? Councillor Daniluk.
Oh, thank you, your worship. Through administration, I know Mr. Hilton's not here this evening. I was wondering if there's any update for us on, we passed last council meeting the new Recreation and Cultural Advisory Committee of Council. How are we proceeding with getting membership out, or applications out to the public on getting that process up and running for people to apply for that committee?
Ms. Schwartz.
Thank you very much. Through your worship to Councillor Daniluk, I'll have to get back to you on that. I'll check with Kerry.
Is there any member of council wishing to make a statement this evening? Okay, seeing none. CAO. Councillor Daniluk. Sorry.
Thank you, worship. I just wanted to commend you on your article in the paper this past weekend with your first edition of your mayor's message to the public. I thought it was very well written. I think it looks really good, and I think it's going to be a great vehicle for you as leader of our council to get the message out to the public about what we're doing. I thought it was very well written and very well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the comments. CEO?
You took away my light. Very quickly, can't understate the land use bylaw and getting third reading tonight. That's a great piece of governance and something that both administration and council have worked very hard. I've seen councils go through an entire term, and that's the bylaw that they pass. You just did an MDP, you just did an LUB, and you've got like 6 directional plans on the go. So that's pretty impressive because that stuff moves quickly. Land use bylaw, in my opinion, is, well, I got a planner beside me, so I might not get away with this one, is even more important than that MDP. But job well done, and thanks everybody for the participation. Piggyback off Mr. Harris's comments on the Grant Funding Advisory Committee, and I thought he summed that up really well. This is a great committee. I've seen it work in other communities. It's got a specific set of criteria. It is a group discussion and a group decision, and then they make a recommendation to council. So I urge the public, regardless of your affiliation, and that's a great aha for me when you mentioned that the other day. It was a dynamic that I didn't think of, is come on out, give it a try. It's a neat group, and it allows you to allocate specific funding across the community. Today is the 102nd anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Very important in Canadian history. It's the first time all 4 divisions went to battle, so from sea to sea to sea. They were extremely successful. 170,000 troops, 4 divisions from Canada, 1 from Britain, went over. There were over 10,000 casualties, including 3,598 dead and 7,000 wounded. In that battle, they also took about 4,000 German troops were captured. It was a 5-day battle, and while it's not considered the most important battle, of course there were others. As I said, it was the first time that all 4 divisions got together, and they were recognized as having superior tactics, superior training, and perseverance. And that's just describes our country, quite frankly. So I wanted to mention that. A lot of great things going on. So let's bring on summer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have no correspondence. Is there any notice of motions this evening? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to move into closed session pursuant to Section 29(1)B of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Act? Councillor Danlock.
So move, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor?